whole new beautiful dimension to sharing it, because it is like, hey, come on into our living room for a little while, and we want to share this gorgeous experience with you to open your eyes to see maybe you might want to also have this experience, right? I think so many people don't even, one, know about home birth, and two, realize it's possible.
Welcome to the Journey to Birth podcast. I have a really special episode for you today with birth professional and expectant mom, Alexis Christine Wild. Alexis is a birth doula, an educator, and an all-around birth supporter, and is currently expecting her own baby. We will talk about the unique birth experience that she's arranged for her own birth, and you'll get to see a little bit of what happens when two birth professionals get together to talk about birth. I will let Alexis share her birth arrangements in the interview, but if you want to grab the link that she'll share so you can follow her journey to birth, you can find it at birthofthewild.ca/live. You can also find that link in the show notes. And I'll mention it again at the end of this episode. I just want to make sure that you have plenty of opportunities to grab that link in case you want to be part of the experience that Alexis is sharing. And now, let's meet Alexis Christine Wild on the Journey to Birth podcast. Welcome to the Journey to Birth podcast. Today, I have a very special guest that I'm really excited to have a conversation with. This is Alexis Christine Wild, and she is very involved in the birth world in many ways, and I'll let you share what you do, what your different roles are in birth, Alexis. What we're really going to focus our talk on today, though, is about your own upcoming birth, because you're doing something very special and different than what most people do with their births. So why don't you share the exciting news?
Awesome. Thank you. So I'm actually live streaming the home birth of my fifth baby. So this will be our fourth child in our family. And I had a surrogate baby in 2017. So I'm kind of experienced in giving birth, I suppose you could say. And this is the last baby that we'll have in our family. So I kind of wanted it to be something that I could share out and show people what birth can be like, because we hear a lot in the media of trauma and blood and screaming, and it can be quite intense, the stories that we hear and see. And I want to provide the other side of the spectrum of birth.
Yeah, so this is really exciting, live streaming your birth. So you're going to be doing that on YouTube?
Yes. So I just was actually looking up today to see if I could do it on Facebook and YouTube at the same time.
Oh,
but we'll see. YouTube It is so far.
Okay. So live streaming your birth on YouTube. When did you first know that live streaming your birth was going to be something that was going to be a part of your birth experience?
I actually was really curious about it when I was pregnant with a surrogate baby back in 2017, because that experience was something that is so unusual for many people. And so that was one that I was really hoping I could make more public, the story about it. But it wasn't just my experience, right? So the family that I was having their baby, they weren't really on board with that. So no live stream for that one. And then my son Jackson was born in 2018. So I had a back-to-back years of having babies there. And his birth was just coming out of a separation. And I was, again, wanting to share, but feeling like, oh my gosh, I just separated from my husband and now I'm pregnant with this baby, and feeling a lot of, I guess, shame from outside about this experience, even though it's beautiful, right? Bringing a baby into the world. And I had a new partner already. So just a lot of fear around what people would think of me if now all of a sudden I'm like, oh, here's this baby. So it's been something that's been in my mind for several years now, right? 3 years. And finally, this is the last baby I'm having. So it's kind of the last chance to do it. And again, just to share, like, it feels very exciting to be able to open up and be both vulnerable and powerful in this experience.
How has your family responded so far? So your partner now, and then your children, who are the ones who are old enough to understand. Yeah. Your 2-year-old probably doesn't quite understand what live streaming is yet.
Mm-hmm. So my partner is incredibly supportive of everything I do. He's the only reason really that I could even be a doula in my work. And he has actually been part of a couple of the radio interviews that we've done locally. So that's been really wonderful. And it's been a special thing to share together with other people and also to share our connection and our relationship as part of the whole experience. And you're right, Jackson does not know what's going on. He's 2, but the girls are excited. And I think there's a little bit of an understanding there that they realize they know more about birth than most kids do. And they're being part of sharing this with a bigger community can help other people get that understanding as well. My oldest daughter is actually wanting to catch the baby together with Scott. And then Ember wants to cut the cord and announce the gender. So they really, really are involved in the experience of the birth. And Aprilia has been there for Ember's birth and Jackson's. So she's kind of becoming a pro at all of this too. But they're very excited for the birth. And I think they understand the live stream, but the full impact of what they're sharing together as a family, I think isn't completely there.
Yeah. So have you been having conversations around that so far to help them understand how much this was being shared?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's also something that if at any time they don't want to be on a video, then it gets shut off, right? Like it's first the priority to make sure that my family is comfortable and safe in the experience. But they learn from me, and they're like me in that they're comfortable with their bodies. They're comfortable with sharing experiences with others. And I think that it's a rich experience to be able to share that together with them.
Yeah, this will be an experience that very few other children will ever have in their life. Even just having children out of birth is relatively unheard of still in this day and age. But to have them be part of a live stream birth, this whole like family centered birth is going to be so great for people to see how really beautiful that can be, to have the whole family be there to welcome this newest member into the household.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that it adds a whole new beautiful dimension to sharing it, because it is like, hey, come on into our living room for a little while, and we want to share this gorgeous experience with you to open your eyes to see maybe you might want to also have this experience, right? I think so many people don't even, 1, know about home birth, and 2, realize it's possible for them.
Yeah, I feel like because it's so much a part of our world as people who support home birth and support alternative, quote unquote, alternative birth choices, you forget how much people don't even realize that it's an option for them.
Yeah. And it's an option for most people, right? Like most people could qualify. And I don't really even want to say that word, but most people would be okay with the home birth.
Yes. Far more than realize it or are told. I actually saw an infographic on a social media post where they had, it was by midwives, a midwife center. And it was a Venn diagram that said qualify for home birth, don't qualify for home birth, and then maybe. And it was not accurate. It ruled out so many people. It was really quite disappointing. And it brings up a little bit of concern that even these midwife centers are potentially spreading this information of, because of their licensure, right? It's not whether or not these people can actually have a safe home birth. It's because their licensure prohibits them from accepting these women into their care for a home birth. But it's unfortunate that gets spread in that way.
It really is unfortunate. And I think that the more we see people who are taking control of their own birth experience, the more we realize it's okay, right? So with midwives, I mean, that is a more woman-centered model of care, but they do still have so many restrictions.
Yes.
And it can take away a little bit of that power. And so when we see, okay, wait a second, I do have the power in this experience, and it is my choice, anything that happens, then we can kind of fight back against those restrictions, even with midwives, right? And of course, every care provider has different things that they are comfortable with. So it is a relationship, but it's still ultimately your birth.
Yeah. So while we're on the topic of midwives, I know you will have a couple of midwives attending you for this birth. How are they feeling about the live stream?
Yes, so they were not very excited about it at the beginning. And I think most of that was because, one, we're in the middle of a pandemic, so everything's kind of weird already. And then two, coming from the more medical side of things, they know all the things that can go wrong in birth, right? And it's not common that things go wrong in birth, but there certainly are many things that could go wrong. And so for them, their concern was, well, if something goes wrong, we have this on a live stream and we don't really want to be recorded. So it was just working together with them to say, okay, well, let's not do it on a phone. Let's do it on the computer. And if anything goes wrong at any time, if they feel like they want to shut down the live stream, all they have to do is close the computer. So it's really just a simple way of, all right, I want to do this, but I have to work together with everybody who's going to be here, right?
So when you found out you were pregnant, you already had the idea of doing the live stream because you had already had this idea with your previous couple of pregnancies. So did you go into this as soon as you found out knowing you were going to live stream it, or was it still kind of developing?
It was still kind of developing because, like, I want to say, yes, all these things I'm curious about, I just go and do them right away. But I'm still human. And so there was like the fear of, well, is this something that is okay to do? Like, am I allowed to do this? And I also have an ex-husband who shares custody of my girls that I have to also communicate with. So they are very excited to be at this birth. So I also wanted to make sure that if they're at his house when I go into labor, that they're going to be able to get here somehow. And so when I finally communicated with him and had a conversation and made all of that clear, then I realized, oh, well, hang on a second. If all of that's okay and things are moving along, well, why don't we live stream it? And then it happened really quickly. So I found out that yes, they could come anytime. Just let us know. We'll drop them off. And then about a week later, I put out the press release that we were going to live stream it. So even though it had been in the back of my head, it it still took some time to come around to say, yeah, let's do it. And now that I've said, yeah, let's do it, it feels great. And I think that if I hadn't, I would really regret it.
So then the midwives, had you already chosen your midwives before the live streaming was solidified, or was it the other
Yes.
way around? Okay.
Yes. So in Ontario, Canada, where I live, everything is covered by our OHIP insurance. So midwives are actually pretty hard to get because many people want them. And generally, they all work out of a clinic. So in our clinic, I want to say that there's 5 or 6 teams of 2 midwives each. And so then you meet your 2 midwives throughout your pregnancy. And then when your baby's on the way, you call and one of those midwives will come. And then when it looks like, yes, okay, baby's coming out in the next hour or so, then another midwife from the clinic will come and be the backup so that there's somebody there for you and somebody there for the baby.
So did you get some choice in your midwife team, or are you assigned midwives?
I could choose if I wanted to, but these are the midwives that I had with my son Jackson and with the surrogate birth. So because I already had them, I actually you kind of get first in line. Like if you are pregnant again and you have to call like right away. Like when you find out you're pregnant, you call right away to get a midwife here because many people want them, and unfortunately not everybody who wants one can get one because there's not enough midwives.
Yes, I have heard that Canada has a bit of an access issue
Mm-hmm.
in that way, or some parts of Canada anyway. So they were already hired on as your midwives before you had told them you were going to live stream.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you told them that you were going to do this, I know you said they were not excited about it, but how did that conversation go? Did it take them a while to come around, or was it like one appointment you talked about it and they said, okay, by the end of the appointment?
Yeah, so we talked about it over the phone because some of our appointments have been different now because of the COVID. the COVID, dun, dun, dun.
I know.
So I mentioned to them, hey, I'm kind of interested in live streaming this. And you're going to be here, obviously, because you're my care providers. How does that feel for you? And they expressed that they would not be comfortable with it. So they first said, well, we have to go back and talk as a team, because I was only meeting with one out of the two at that time, right? And then, of course, the second midwife that comes when you're in labor is just somebody from the clinic. So like they kind of had to talk as a clinic and get on board with, does this work out for us? Is this okay? And so even though they said all of that, she still said, but it's your birth. And even in trusting myself and being this powerful woman who makes these choices for myself, I still want to, one, be liked, two, not really rock the boat too much. Like, these are my care providers, right? So I really felt like, oh man, stink. Like, I really, really want to do this live stream, but I need them on board, because they're here to serve me, and I can't have them come into my home and feel horribly uncomfortable while they're here to help me in my birth. So they had their conversation as the clinic, and then I talked some more with Scott and just really got to the place of, okay, she said it's my birth, and it is my birth. So I'm just going to have to say that I'm going to do it. So I talked to them again, and one of their concerns was if they needed to shut it down, like, how do they shut it down? And so just having it on the computer was a way to very quickly eliminate that concern, because you just close the screen and everything's shut off, right? And this birth, we want to do most of the things on our own. So they're kind of just in the background anyways. And that felt good for them to just be back out of the screen for the majority of the birth. And then if they are needed, they can hop in. And if they don't want to have a live stream going anymore, they just shut it down. So I gave them that control over it, because they were the ones that were the most uncomfortable. So it felt fair to say, okay, let's do it, but here's the perimeters and you can control them.
So how many weeks pregnant were you when you had the conversation with them?
Oh gosh, I think I was like 34 or 35. So like we were getting pretty close.
Oh, really?
Like a couple weeks ago. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yes. Yeah. And it's just because I just wasn't ready to say, yes, I want to do this thing yet. And then when I was ready, I was like, oh, I better get all the ducks in a row. Like, and I think I was afraid also of what their reaction was going to be. But it turned out okay, right? And it's an example of, you have to advocate for yourself and what you want, always.
So when did the press release go out?
So the press release went out, I'm going to say about a week ago now. And then I've been on the radio 2 times, and they keep playing the clip over and over again. So I've been on the radio many times with the same clip. But the newspaper story was the first to come out. And then the radio stations, after they saw it, were like, okay, yep, we would like to talk to you. But I sent out press releases all over the place, because I thought, if I'm going to do this, I want to do it big. Like, I want as many people as possible to get to see this and be part of it. And then, of course, like, this also is my business. I'm a doula, and I do have online education. So it's kind of like 2 sides. Like, it's like, hey, I can do this thing that I really want to do. And also, I can maybe help some other pregnant women through some of my programs that now they know about, because I just did this live stream.
It's such a great opportunity in that way, to have somebody who is so knowledgeable about birth and really understands it and has been through it multiple times and has the whole team hopefully on board to be able to offer this gift out to let people really see and experience what that can be.
And we're really planning a very hands-off birth. Like the midwife is not catching the baby. I'm not doing the Pitocin that is often done immediately to prevent postpartum hemorrhage. Like, I just want to just do this on my own. Thank you very much. But that being said, it's always nice to have a professional who's there just in case, right?
Hmm. Yes. So
I'm
do
not a
you
free birth person quite yet.
do you feel like your midwives have changed their thoughts on it, or do you sense that they're a little excited about being a part of this?
I think they're a little excited about being a part of it because now they see that my heart in it is to just share this experience, to help to normalize it, to help others to see that it's okay for them. And I think that, I mean, you can't see that type of truth and not feel something for it. And so I think that they are excited. I just
Yeah.
had an appointment yesterday and she was like, "Oh yeah, that is cool." Like, yeah, I can see you're sharing it for a reason and it will help other people to see that it's okay.
So what are other ways that you had to maybe so tell me first about your other births. So you've done home birth before, so that part is not new for you?
Sure. Yeah, no, it's not. So I have had 3 home births, and then the surrogate baby was born in the hospital. And I labored as long as I could at home, and then we transferred to the hospital as soon as the parents got here. And that was very, very intense birth for many reasons. I think not being at home. I think the experience of, I think your body knows something's different because all along you've, this isn't your baby. And you have grown it, but in a moment, now the new parents are going to take over. And I think something is different in the hormones involved with all of that. And then I didn't have a partner with me, I only had a doula. So the hospital birth with the surrogate was very intense. I felt like a Tarzan woman. But then my home births were lovely. Like it's still a birth, you're still uncomfortable, but I was able to get back and focus and get through contraction by contraction. And then of course in transition, having the most intense feelings, having the ability to go anywhere in my home and do anything and eat when I wanted to, all of that makes those bad parts of labor so much less intense and so much less overwhelming because you're at home.
Mhm.
um, all 3 of the home births were about, oh, sorry, 2 home births, the girls were 12 hours each, and everybody's been born during the day. So I'm curious if this one will be a nighttime baby. And then Jackson was actually a 4-hour labor from beginning to end. And that was quite different because I think in a quick labor, your body doesn't really have time to adjust to what's happening. Just all of a sudden, you're in active labor and contractions are right there and it's back to back. And it was overwhelming for a little bit to get into things. And my partner was having a hard time setting up the birthing tub. And it was just like, whoa, this is really fast. I don't know what's going on. Why is this so intense right away? But having that type of labor experience was also kind of exciting because it was different than the other ones. And it gives me, as a professional, different way to relate to people who are had those experiences. So I'm curious what's going to happen for this baby, if it's going to be a short one, if it's going to be a 12-hour, if it's going to be a daytime baby, a nighttime baby. Who knows? Who knows? Every birth is different.
And that's what makes it so exciting. You don't
Yeah.
know if it's going to be 3 or 4 hours or 12 or 14 hours.
Yeah. And you don't know if it's going to be tomorrow or in 5 more weeks.
Mhm. Yeah. So what are you doing then this time that might be different than how you've prepared for your other home births with that's
Mm,
affected by the fact that it's live streaming?
yeah, good question. Well, I'm not going to be naked right away this time. And that has been it's actually surprising the comments and the feedback from people on some of the media releases that have been happening locally. A lot of people are like waiting for the money shot, like expecting the camera to be full on vagina. And that's not even possible. Like Scott and Aprilia are there catching the baby, and the camera is in the corner of the room. So it's been interesting to see how focused people are on the sexuality of nudity versus the experience of birth. Like they're totally different. But nudity is definitely something that's going to be a little different for me this time around. I've got a nice cozy, like a long night shirt that I'm going to wear just to, one, make sure my live stream isn't going to get pulled down right away from people reporting it for no reason. And two, just to have a little bit of extra comfort for people who might not be ready for that full on nudity right away. But once you've watched the live stream for a couple hours, you're kind of invested, right? So of course, when the baby is born, I'm sure we'll be naked again and ready to breastfeed right away. But that has been something that's different for me, not in terms of live stream, but definitely different in preparing for this birth. I'm really considering the postpartum period, and I really want to have a lovely, kind of decadent week in bed, because it really matters over the long term. And this is the last time I'm having a baby. So it really feels important to me to honor that work that my body has done for all these years. So I've got a whole bunch of homeopathics and some tinctures ready to go for myself, just to aid with healing and try to diminish my after birth pains, because they're generally quite bad. And those would probably be the two things that are different. We're not setting up a water tub this time around because of our little 2-year-old running around. It doesn't feel like something I want to have to think about in labor. But other than that, no, we're just excited. We're ready to go, I think.
Were any of your others water births?
Yes. My first was born half in the water, and then they had me hop out of the tub. They were a little bit concerned that maybe her shoulder was stuck. And then my second was born in the water. And then Jackson, I think that our birth tub didn't get set up quite right. And so getting in, it just didn't feel right. So the option was there for a water birth, but no. So one water birth baby and a half.
Hi there, it's Tristan here. I just wanted to take a quick minute to let you know that I've started offering a series of natural birth workshops. And right now, these workshops are free. In this workshop, I cover the 4 critical strategies that you need to know to finally trust your body to birth naturally. If you want to find out more and register for the next workshop, visit naturalbirthcompass.com/natural birth workshop. Can't wait to see you there. And now back to the Journey to Birth podcast. So do you think having the live stream going and knowing that all kinds of people could be out there watching, do you feel like it's going to change the experience for you?
I don't think so, because I've really been able to get in a mindset that all of the negative comments are just ways for me to learn that that's not for me. Like, I don't need to take that stuff in. And then all of the positive comments are so beautiful that it kind of feels like I've collected this little group of women, mostly, who are here, who are going to be like propping me up behind the scenes. Like, it kind of feels like like a pillow, and I'm on a cloud, and here's all these angels all around me, like ready to go anytime I say go, to be there. Like, it really feels very beautiful. I definitely had a day of adjusting to the negativity where I had to check myself, right? Because one, I got a little angry because many of the comments were like, ew, yuck, who wants to see that? That's disgusting. And man, if you take that stuff in, that can be really toxic. So I really had to kind of alchemize it into something good. And so I've been using all of those negative comments as kind of fodder for some blog posts and some social media comments. And it's been a really nice way to turn things around.
So are more of the people who are responding negative, are they responding more out of the fact that you're live streaming it, or more out of the fact that you're doing a home birth?
You know what? A lot of it seems like just a knee-jerk reaction to birth and to women's bodies. Because I mean, if I probably wouldn't do a press release if I was going to like post some sex on the internet, but everybody would be excited, right? They'd be like, yay, sex, we love sex. But I think because it's a birth, people are just, one, misinformed, too afraid. And like it's hard to even figure out if most of the comments are coming from men or most are coming from women, because it's been quite a mix. And it just shows me that it's important to show birth, like to show natural birth, to show home birth. And it was surprising because I told my inner circle first. And so I had that big outpouring of like, this is so amazing. You're so brave. This is great. And then I did a press release in our city, and there's about 250 comments on the bottom of this press release now that went out on Facebook. And it took a while before any of the comments were good. But I had that base of support already, right, to prop me up. So I was kind of ready for whatever came.
Yeah, making natural birth normal. It sounds like you definitely tagged that one with what a big underpinning of that negativity, where that's coming
it really, really showed me that is just so important to share. And my job is not to be concerned about what anybody thinks. My job is just to do the thing, right? And if I get caught up in, all right, I'm going to put this thing out there and what is everybody going to think? Then I can't do it with integrity, and I'll be stressed out and I'll be concerned and I'll be checking the comments every hour. And that doesn't help me. That doesn't serve anybody.
Yeah, but I think your observation of understanding where those are coming from is exactly the way that those of us who are doing this work, out here trying to spread the message that there's so many ways to birth and none of them are wrong, none of them are right. They're all an individual choice, and we need to, educate people in what that can look like. But
and our bodies aren't like our bodies are amazing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. I think that's the huge piece that draws us all in to become birth support people, right? It's just how amazing the process itself is.
Yes.
Right. It's like there's nothing else that is that level of expression of what life is outside of
And
birth.
I think for the comments that were negative, that were coming from women, it really feels sad. Like I feel sad for those women. And I feel like, you can't educate everybody, and everybody is not for everybody else. But imagine if every woman had the experience of trusting their body so fully, like in all ways, how different birth would be. Like you wouldn't ever hear somebody say ew about birth if everybody trusted their bodies about birth.
Yeah. Yeah. Saying
it feels heavy. It feels heavy a little bit, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah. And the fact that one of the overwhelming responses is ew.
Yeah. People have been curious about the live stream, about how it's going to be set up. And it's just the computer's going in the corner of the room and you can kind of see the whole living room. So sometimes I'm probably not even going to be in it, right? Sometimes I'm going to be in the shower. Sometimes I'm going to be going to the bathroom. But the living room is where the baby's going to be born. And another question that has come up is, how are people going to know when it goes live? And I'll give you a quick link if that's okay, Tristan.
Yeah, for sure.
birthofthewild.ca/live, and people can go on there and then they enter their email and they'll get a notification email when we go live. And I think that I'm going to go live like when it seems like, yep, this is labor and it's happening, because I don't want to be in early labor and everyone's just like, okay, what's going on, right? Because early labor can be so silly. Like you just ignore it and you go on with your day, and then it starts to progress, and that's when we'll let people know.
Are you doing video updates anywhere, or do you have something as things are getting close and you might feel like things are starting to change or you're getting stuff set up? Is there a way that people can follow that?
Yeah, so I'm doing most of that through email too. I've got a video that I'm doing later today showing my living room and showing my home birth supplies and things like that. I'm just still now integrating the Instagram and the Facebook and the email. and really trying not to overwhelm myself with all the different things that I can do all at once. So it'll mostly be on Instagram and through the email.
So if people go to the link, they can find all that.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'll put that in the show notes so they can
Yeah.
just have that there. So I know you guys don't know the gender of the
No,
baby
we
yet.
don't.
That's going to be another reveal, which I love. Have you done any ultrasounds or anything like that, or have you waived all of
Yeah.
those?
So I did one ultrasound this pregnancy. I had a lot of worry and anxiety at the beginning of this pregnancy, and I've never had a miscarriage. And so, like, this is my 5th pregnancy, and I did a surrogacy. I did IVF. And so it feels sometimes like, okay, well, I mean, I know what the odds are for losing a pregnancy. And so I really was nervous that this was going to be the time. And so we did an ultrasound about 20 weeks, and it helped to relieve a little bit of that. But I also had to work through and allow myself to be worried, because the more I pushed that away, the stronger it got. And everything has to be felt, right? So I let myself just be worried. And every time that it came up, I did some tapping and I said, it's okay. You're worried. Let's have a moment of being worried. And all right, now let's continue on with the day. And that helped me to be able to get on with being pregnant and enjoy it instead of be worried about, am I going to be pregnant forever? So we did the one ultrasound also for the kids too, because they were excited to see the baby on the ultrasound.
That's a really interesting experience for you. I bet that's going to inform a lot of your birth support in the future, because so many people, I feel like, come from a place of having a lot of worry in their pregnancy.
Yes,
Because
absolutely.
we haven't quite developed that trusting
Mm-hmm.
factor to the level that we really could. I mean, miscarriage is definitely a reality, and other, birth events are a reality for some people. Not to say those things never happen, but not to the extent that it matches with the amount of worry that we see around pregnancy
Mm-hmm.
and birth.
And that can happen to everybody. So I was also surprised, like, why am I worrying? Because I trust my body. I love my body. I'm great at being pregnant. And it felt like, whoa, why am I even worrying about this? But I was. So I needed to let that go through. And I think telling people about that experience also gives permission, right? It gives permission. Have your feelings, have the crappy ones, have the good ones, have all of them, because then you can feel.
Right. You can't have the good ones without the crappy ones.
Yeah.
I would love to hear a little bit more about how your background in working in birth and supporting other women through birth has informed all of your birth choices so far.
I think I'm going to switch that around, and I'm going to say
Okay.
how my choices has impacted my birth work, because every birth I've become a little bit more outspoken in what I want for my birth. And in doing so, I'm able to share that with others from my own experience rather than just telling them, you can do anything in your birth. Like, it's your choice. I can say, hey, here's some choices I made in my birth that you might be curious about. And maybe that's for you. For instance, not having cervical checks, or not being induced. Like, here's some options that are pretty mainstream that most people do. And I didn't do them and everything was okay. And maybe that's something that you might be curious about. Um, so much of what I share on social media is my own experience and is myself kind of pushing the edges of comfort zones for a lot of people. Like, even being a surrogate, like, for many people, one, that might not even be an acceptable thing to do, and for others it's just so foreign. But it was something that made me feel curious, and so I did it. I changed my name because I was curious. I'm doing this live stream because I was curious. And I think sharing those experiences and sharing the courage to do things just because you're curious helps other people to do them. And so in most of my work, always is coming back to asking my clients, how does this feel for you? Because it's not about me. It's not about your care provider even. It's about, how does this feel for you? Like, is this in alignment with what you want for your birth? Is this in alignment with the values that you have? And sometimes that's quite a long conversation, right? Because we are working with care providers who do have their own bias. It's just a fact. We're all human. But definitely living my life in a way of trusting myself has informed my work to help others to trust themselves. Even through like the education that I provide and the comfort that I provide, it still always comes back to trust.
So I'm curious if you know where your level of curiosity in all of these different avenues, where does that come from? How did you develop that?
I
Or
don't really
or were
know.
you just
I
born with
always
it?
was a person, yeah, I guess I always was a person who really loved to learn, but I grew up in a very strict Baptist household. So we weren't taught about sex. We weren't really taught about our bodies, about our period. Um, and I got married when I was 19. So I kind of fell into, okay, you get married, then you have kids. And I just did the things, even though I didn't realize really what I was doing, just kind of following along in the steps of what I thought I needed to do, which is what we do when we're young, right? And I took a course called Sacred Pregnancy in 2014. And that would probably be one of the things that amplified my trust in myself. And then I was able to bring that into the things that I did. And it's really about honoring the woman and the pregnancy as a beautiful, wonderful experience. And so I went to actually a 4-day retreat and was pampered and loved on and did this training. It really showed me that there's other people out there like me who want to grow, who are curious about themselves and curious about all aspects, like the negative and the positive. And so since then, I think it's just been growing and growing. And I've given myself permission to follow the things that make me curious. So I left my ex-husband in 2017, right around the time the surrogate baby was born. It was quite a year. And that was definitely a big courageous thing too. And I just have to keep doing the things because I'm only alive once. And if I don't do the things that come to my heart, that feel like they're for me, then like I'm not really living. I'm not really living my life if I'm not doing all those things that come to me. So I don't know where it started, but I'm happy that I'm like this now.
Yeah, I think spending time being curious about ourselves ultimately gives us so much power.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's not something that we're necessarily allowed to do in a way here, anyhow, in
Mm-hmm.
the more Western world. It's not something we're necessarily given permission to do. I think we either have to take permission to do it or end up, finding a program or a mentor that really opens your eyes
Mm-hmm.
to the whole world of yourself and how much power there is in that when you actually take the time to follow
Yeah,
that.
I agree. And sometimes I think it's just even just people who we're drawn to on the internet, right? Like even just people who we follow on Instagram, for example, who catch us in a way that we want to not be like them, but like we see something in them and that makes us curious and we're like, oh, like how are they like that? And how could I have more of what I see that I really like in my own life? And it doesn't have to be like a big, huge event or anything that we've gone to. Sometimes it's just like a social media post. Like, for example, I was always curious about not shaving my armpits. And then I saw some people not shaving their armpits. And so I tried it. And it's so fun. And that's just like a little thing, but it's all those little things that, hey, if you're curious about it, you gotta try it because maybe you're gonna love it.
So I am curious what you will tell this little baby about their birth.
Oh, well, we'll just tell them that it was a beautiful, wonderful birth and so many people got to be part of it. Yeah. Something that has been surprising too with the negativity is many people have said things like, oh, well, this is going to make a therapist a lot of money someday. Or how do you feel about their friends finding the video when they're older? Or like, everyone's going to get made fun of for this. Well, I don't think that my kids are going to hang out with kids that would do things like that. Like, because we're a family that's proud of who we are, and we're proud of our bodies, and we're proud to be human, and we're proud to be these powerful creatures. So I think growing up, they'll be excited to know that they got to be part of something like this.
It would not even have occurred to me that people would make comments of that nature.
Yeah,
That
but
kind
it's
of,
everybody's so different, right? Yeah.
yeah. Well, and just, some of the images I have in my own mind of what births look like that I feel like are not handled in a way that is respectful of the mother
Mm-hmm.
or the baby,
Mm-hmm.
and how that is not acknowledged in the mainstream.
Mm.
The positions that women are held down in and directed to push, if anything, should require therapy.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It feels like a lot of the backlash is against a it is because they're seeing a woman who's doing whatever she wants with her own body.
Hmm.
And I mean, that's not normal. Like, I mean, it should be normal, but really, like, it's not. And people don't like that. Like, people don't like a woman who is free to do whatever she wants.
Mm-hmm.
And a woman who is like enjoying it and flaunting it, right? Which really is kind of what I'm doing, right? I'm like, look at me, I'm gonna have this epic birth, and here it is if you want to watch it.
But it's so necessary, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we just don't grow up that way.
Yeah.
We don't grow up seeing births of even our own siblings. For most of us,
Yeah.
we never see that. When my sisters were born, I didn't see them until they were brought home from the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
When both of my kiddos were born at home, and my daughter was here when my son was born, but she was only 17 months old, so she doesn't remember.
Mm. Well, and it's like we need some ritual and some structure around that transition from not being a parent to then having a baby and being a parent. And I think that home birth is kind of already like you're at home, you are in your comfortable space, maybe you've lit some candles, you get in your own cozy bed afterwards. Where when you leave your house and go to the hospital and then bring this baby home, you've really lost like a transition there that is a disconnect, you know? Um, so I think home birth is really beneficial in terms of connection, and definitely in terms of postpartum coziness, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah, for sure. One of my teachers and mentors, she calls any birth that's not a home birth an out of home birth. Instead of saying,
Mm.
oh, you're having an out of hospital birth, she calls it an out of home birth,
Mm-hmm.
which is
Yeah,
great.
our language really does um, not dictate, but like our language is really important surrounding birth.
Yeah.
One that I really like to change is informed consent to informed choice,
Mm-hmm.
because informed consent kind of has the attitude of like, well, I'm going to tell you all the stuff, and then you're going to
And
want
you'll
to do
give
it.
consent.
Well, no. And that, like, even showing a home birth has something to do with informed choice as well, right? Like, this is my informed choice, and there is the risks. I know what they are. I am not a high risk pregnancy, so it's very, very safe. I'm going to give birth at home, and that's my informed choice. And letting people know that they have that option is pretty amazing.
That's a tricky one too, just because informed is
Mm-hmm.
such a subjective term in and of itself.
Absolutely. And we're all people, right? So like even when I do my childbirth education, I am sure that there are things that I teach that come from my bias.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure that I teach them in a way that is different than someone else would teach them.
Oh,
And
yeah,
that's
for sure.
human, right? It's just because we're human. So I can try to cover all the pros and cons and say it's your choice. but maybe I made more emphasis on the pros, right? Or
Yeah.
maybe I made more emphasis on the cons because I think this is a shitty thing to do in birth,
Yep.
right?
Yep. We have to have a bias because
Mhm.
at the end of the day, we have to make a choice. I actually did a
Yeah.
whole podcast episode just about bias.
Mm. And I think as
Because
birth workers, there's like stigma against bias. But if you know what your bias is and you are informed in that for yourself, then you're
Mhm.
able to kind of be picky about the people you work with so that it is a good relationship. So you're not kind of like putting that on them. You just know that they believe the same things as you. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like many doulas are like, oh, I'm just going to take any client who comes to me. Well, that's not kind of doula I am. Like, I'm really picky. I want to work with people that I align with because then I'm able to help you better because I can connect with you. I can help you to trust yourself because I know you better.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, when I teach childbirth education, it's all about understanding basically your own biases, right? And
Mm-hmm.
identifying the fact that everybody on your birth team is going to have their own and like where these come from, how they develop, and then how they reflect in birth, how they reflect in our understanding and perception of birth. And then, the fact that everybody around you is going to have their own set and we don't even realize that about ourselves. So how are you going to realize that about somebody else? Just like all of those layers of things, which
Yeah.
is where like somebody like you comes along and it's like, oh, I'm just curious about things. And so I try them. Like that's such a key to
Mm-hmm.
changing so much about how we live and how we experience the world. And then these big, scary things like birth become so much less scary because we start to experience things and really understand that life is full of these big experiences. We just don't
Mm-hmm.
see them.
Mm-hmm. I like that because it's true. Like, yes, birth is this big experience, but also it's not. Like,
Mm-hmm.
also, it's just us being human beings, and
Yes,
it's part of being a human being.
really, it's the same challenges that we face day in and day out and the same beauties that we face day in and day out. It just is at a higher intensity level.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
that's what makes it such a doorway for people if they let it be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if they let it be. And I wish more people let it be that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But some just don't know. Some just don't know.
Yeah, well, we're working on that.
We're working on it.
Well, I will let you get back to your family.
Well, thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing, and thank you for sharing this with the world and opening people's eyes and helping them see what a wonderful, natural, family-centered birth can look like, and a really hands-off birth. I think it's such a wonderful way to show people
Thank you.
how to do it. So I can't wait. I will be jumping on, I'm sure, at some point during the whole process and checking in on you guys.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Kristen.
Yes, thank you. Oh, do you want to share one more time the link and then
Of the
also
little blurb.
wherever else people can find you and interact with you and
Sure.
jump into your classes if they want to check that out?
So you can find out more about the live stream at birthofthewild.ca/live. And I'm also on Instagram as Birth of the Wild. And then you can find me on Facebook too, but I'm mostly on Instagram and on the website right now. So birthofthewild.ca is where you will find me.
Okay, I will put all that in the show notes so people can just click right through.
Awesome. Yay. Well, it was so nice to connect with you.
It was so nice to connect with you too.
We always geek out with other birthing people, eh?
I know, we do. We could probably keep going for a while at this, but we'll just do a part 2 later.
Talk to you later.
All right, take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening and being open to new perspectives as we spend this time together. You can find Alexis Christine Wild at birthofthewild.ca. And if you want to register to catch her live stream, you can find that link at birthofthewild.ca/live. Then you'll get notified when her live stream starts. As always, let me know how I can support your journey. If you have topics you want to hear about, guests you'd like to hear from, questions or comments to share, let me know. This podcast is always transforming, and you can help shape it into something that helps thousands of families have the best pregnancy, birth, and transition into parenthood possible by leaving a comment or a review or sharing this podcast with others in your life who will benefit from our discussions. Find me on the socials at Natural Birth Compass or email me at info@naturalbirthcompass.com. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss out on our next episode. Wishing you a wonderful journey to birth.